My favorite thing about the Bible is how jacked up everybody is. You took your faith to a place that most people won't. Most people forget about prisoners. You're talking to the people who are actually where Jesus went.
We talk about rock bottom, but when you are surrounded by rock, by concrete rock, there's no place lower than that. Nothing has taught me more about Christ and about how Christ comes to take away our sin more than working in recovery. Addiction ultimately is religious. And you know what? Everyone's religious. Through the priesthoods of the drugs and alcohol, you're reaching for something beyond yourself. They're looking for God at the bottom of a bottle. So through the priesthood of that, they're reaching for something, and we're all doing that.
Welcome to Alive and Sober with Reno C, where real life, recovery, and faith collide. Welcome to Alive and Sober with Reno C, brought to you by Back to the Bible. We are basically broken people talking to other broken people, just trying to spread some love and drop some seeds. And today I am with my new buddy, RJ. He is a pastor. He's not an alcoholic or addict, but he does work with us quite a bit. Yeah. And normally we'd go in one direction, but I kind of want to do something different today because tomorrow is my first time ever going in. We talked about it earlier, going and talking to prisoners and kind of holding a little recovery deal and testimonial and stuff like that. And I would love to ask you, because I've never done it, what it's like, because you do prison ministry. Like we were talking about how I got lost in this building trying to find the bathroom. It's like a maze, and you were telling me about the prison system, like you get all turned around. But I'm so intrigued with it because a big part of my recovery is redemption and feeling like I was unable to have it. Like there was no way out for me. And I've come to believe that anybody who's breathing can have redemption. And Jesus finds us where we are, not where we think. We don't have to clean up and change our clothes and, stop doing things. It's for Jesus to come into our lives. And I'm just so intrigued with the prison ministry. Could you kind of tell everybody what that's like, how you got involved in it, and then kind of what that's like?
Well, so I kind of wear dual hats, as it were, man. I do ministry in a prison, but basically I work for the state. I'm a chaplain, or a religious coordinator is another word for that. So I bring people in from the outside that are doing stuff with people in prison. I facilitate groups, do different things like that, help groups actually run. So I'm kind of like, I have a foot in both worlds right there. I'm also a pastor at F Street Neighborhood Church who has its births in prison ministry, right? The Northern Lighthouse, which is an awesome church here in Lincoln, they planted a church where people on paper, which is being on probation or parole, a lot of them get housed or have treatment down in the F Street neighborhood, and they saw a big need to have ministry down there. So they planted a church down there, and that church and ministries have really grown with people who were at Northern Lighthouse and are now down on paper down there. So I run a recovery meeting. I facilitate a recovery meeting. I bring some guys in from the outside the most beautiful things happen in that because it's on what we call the reception side. So guys who are just coming into prison and they know that they need something. And they don't want to be coming back. They don't want to keep doing this again and again and again. And so that really opens up worlds because you know what? We talk about rock bottom, but when you are surrounded by rock, by concrete rock, and by a bunch of other people, there's no place lower than that.
And you meet them where they are.
Yeah, we're right there. And there they can hear a transcendent call, more than you can hear from all the busyness of the outside world. A God calling them into relationship. There's this one guy inside who he's there for a long period of time. Young kid when he came in, but he had been raised Catholic in a Catholic school, and he's still Catholic. And in the Catholic tradition, they sing or do these prayers 7 times a day, right? And they're like whole services that they do. And he does all 7 of them every single day. And I said, bro, what does your cellie think of that? And he's like, oh, he just wears headphones. And so like 7 different points of the day, this dude is just like fine-tuning his relationship with Jesus, and, you hear guys come through there and they've been sober for a long time, and they it's like that they're allergic because they break out in handcuffs, man.
That's right.
As soon as
That's right, the allergy.
Right? And it's they go on one bender and now they're doing 7 years.
Right.
They had it all together.
So much of like the guys I've met that have served time, so much of it, or so many of the people that are in jail, it's because of mental illness or addiction. And a lot of them were like, dude, I never would have done this if I didn't need this, if I didn't need that. Meth is a big one. Like once you get involved and you are addicted to something, for me, it was alcohol. I did stuff I never would have naturally done. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That found me in jail, or that found me in a divorce, or found me, like a lot of the decisions I made, when that becomes your God, right? You follow it.
Right.
And it's like air. So whatever you need to do to get that, you will do. I heard a guy, and this is one of the coolest quotes I've ever heard. He said, and he's in recovery, and he said, I went from a hopeless dope dealer to a dopeless hope dealer. Right? Like, and that just hit me like, man, that's beautiful. Like you were hopeless in this addiction and selling it because that's how you get more for yourself, and it makes it easy, and but to turn that around. But I think in my head, because my idea of people who go to prison has changed a lot. Like I used to be like, throw them away, get rid of them, da-da-da. Well, I'm doing the exact same things that, it's good to get them off the street, but leave me alone, that type of thing. Right. But so many of the people that go in to our jail systems and stuff like that, it is brought on by addiction. You're responsible for what you do, and you have to pay the price. But at the same time, it's like, it's so weird that we don't treat the addiction. We try to treat it after they're already in jail.
Right.
Right. But hey man, we got to meet people where they are. I think that's what Jesus wants us to do. And I just love the fact that you're doing it. And in prison, there's still booze and drugs, right? I mean, tons of it.
Tons, yeah.
Right? I'm not trying to get all my information from Mayor of Kingstown or anything, but the prisons are full of it. So to get sober there would seem harder to me. Do you find that like guys that are in there, or are they screaming out for it? Like you said, I don't want to come back. I don't want to.
So when they're first sentenced, man, slapped onto a bus and end up in a housing unit on the reception side, they're like, oh, they're screaming for it. But by the time they reach a different facility, man, they're kind of in that rhythm, and there's some things with all of that, but they just get into a rhythm. It just becomes a new place for them. And then that's when there's booze and drugs. And like, here's the other thing. Things that are very common that I found for addicts is what guys need to do inside a lot of times to survive. And that is be manipulative. Right.
Right.
Now, it's not good to be manipulative, but like sometimes, man, that's the only way you're going to get things done. Like you trying to visit your mom, right? So you got to find the person who's going to make that call because your paperwork keeps getting kicked back to you. And so you got to find that person who's going to actually make that call to make that easier for you, right? And so, you're kind of looking for a mark, right? You're doing things that you would do in addiction. And this is how we tell people this is how you survive inside. Right?
Swim with sharks.
And so and there's tons of things that happen inside that like man, if you even talked about it, people would just think you were making it up. So people don't even talk about it, man.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely radical and different. And, and guys are like you'll find, they'll have 50 pounds of hooch cooking. Like, right? And it's like, man, you don't even got electricity. Like,
right. They'll figure it out. MacGyver.
Right. Yeah. And so like, there's all of that. So guys got to stay clean inside. They have to work on their, character and stuff like that as well. Right. Are flaws that we all have. Right. Just like any addict who needs to work on what they're doing, also you got to work on your, on your character. Right?
Yeah. Drinking and drugs are a symptom.
Right.
Right. Like there's more going on. There's a reason you do it. It's not, I thought when I first went in recovery, like if I just quit drinking, my life would be perfect. Not the case. There was a whole lot of jacked up stuff with me that I would not even acknowledge. Just shove it down, numb it, get rid of it. But I can't imagine, like when you first meet them, how do you approach them as far as addiction? Like, you're holding recovery meetings? Right.
So honestly, as far as that goes, that's just from conversation. Because the guys who want to go to these meetings, I'm not out recruiting for meetings, right? That is not my job, right?
Doesn't work anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
My job is to facilitate what people need and want for spiritual growth, right? And so with recovery meetings or with, I facilitate services in there and stuff like that. That's more my job. The thing is that there's no hiding it. All the guys know I know what their charge is, right? So there's no hiding, I don't even know if I could say this, but I one time got in a little bit of trouble because when I was going to pick up people for some meetings, I said, if there's any drunks in here who have a pass to prove it, because you need a pass to go outside of your cell.
Right.
Come over here. And guys thought that was hilarious, right? Some of the staff didn't find that so funny, and I got in a little bit of trouble for that. But here's the thing, just like in recovery meetings, people think that it would be super serious, right? Prison, there's a lot of lightheartedness because, man, if it's not lighthearted, people are just going to be crying all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Going to be upset. And so I often approach it with humor or I'll walk onto a housing unit and there's a dude all glossy-eyed and right in my face, real close talking. And I'll be like, yo, what are you guys doing on here? Does your corporal need to go searching or what, man? Like, what? And they'll be like, oh, get that dude out of his face. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's just like, there's just a lot of, it can be more like lighthearted in there, So I often, whether it's in there or on the streets, at F Street, I approach, like when I approach people about stuff, it's normally kind of more lighthearted,
Yeah. What got you into being a pastor?
Here's the thing, man. I grew up in I grew up east of Los Angeles, about 6 miles east of Los Angeles in a town called Whittier.
I know where that is.
Whittier,
I used to live out there. Yeah, I lived in Studio City.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
The church, my dad was a pastor, and he was a pastor on the corner of Riggin and Finley in Monterey Park. And there was projects right there. And so, kind of a different kind of ministry and church and stuff like that. And so I grew up in church and stuff. And I had some church hurt, but at 18, I went into the Coast Guard and traveled all over, did a bunch of stuff, got to surf basically around the world, do all kinds of cool stuff. That was 80 pounds ago. But got to do a lot of really cool stuff. And when I got out, they were going to pay me a stipend to go to school, and they were going to pay for my school. So I was like, man, I can do this. Right. So I finished up. I got an undergraduate degree, and then I was like, well, what should I do? And I said, you know what? And honestly, I don't really know why, man. But throughout my life at different times, I've always thought maybe God was calling me into ministry, and then I would go the opposite direction because I did not want to do that, man. I wanted to make some money. I wanted, I don't know, man. But you know what? If you're going to pay me, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And so I went, I got a degree, and then God let me out here to Nebraska, and literally, I don't even understand how this happened. I had two options, right? One place already offered me a job. It was a place in Florida with bad youth, right? And they sort of traveled around the Caribbean with these bad kids. And I was like, yo, this sounds like me right here, man. Travel around, tell some bad kids not to be so bad. That sounds freaking amazing to me, right? I am all in. And then this little church out in the country in Nebraska was like, hey, why don't you come out for an interview? And so I came out here for an interview, and they brought me out in September so I wouldn't know how horrible the weather is all the time. But I came out here, and they told me that they would, after interviewing me, that they would get back to me in a week. So I told the other company, hey, give me a week. Well, a week passes, and they didn't get back to me. And those people called me and are like, what's up? And you know what? For some unknown reason, man, the Lord, something, I was on my way to the job that I had down there in Southern California. I was living in Dana Point. And I told them no. I said, you know what, man? I'm going to turn down that job. I don't know why.
Isn't that crazy?
I don't know why I would turn a job down from Florida that was going to be traveling around the Caribbean, right, working with teens, to go be a youth pastor. But then that, just several hours later, that evening, actually, I got a phone call from the church out here. And and just a couple months later, man, I was living in Nebraska, and it was cold, and you're
wearing red shirts, and people are hitting you with hot dogs, and
right.
the rest is history.
What's going on? People telling you that runs is good when it's not. But I met my wife out here, and we had a son, and I worked at that church for about 9 years. Stepped away from there. Started working for the state as a religious coordinator, chaplain dude inside of the prison system, and then connected with F Street and started pastoring there. And, I'll tell you, I spent a lot of time in school, but nothing has taught me more about Christ and about sin and about how Christ comes to take away our sin more than working in recovery. The gospel is all over the steps of recovery.
Dude, they're ripped right out of there. I mean, they're the whole,
James Club.
The whole it's James. It is. It's the book of James. Like the whole book that for where I go to meetings. It's all because I was worried when I was doing this podcast. I was like, you know, I don't want to use this book and I don't want to use this and I have to be careful because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Because quite frankly, if I come on and say where I go to meetings and then I fall off the wagon and go take out a family of 4 driving home, they go, your group doesn't work when it was me. Right.
For real.
So I don't. But the whole thing is right out of the Bible. And what's so interesting to me about you is I get it for me why I want to do it because step 12 is going out and helping other addicts and alcoholics. You coming from a place of straight from Christ to delving into this, it sounds like your dad had an influence on you because his ministry seemed, because it's a different kind of ministry. I love when people go into the trenches. I think we're wasting our time talking to people who, I have a problem with people who think they're super religious in a lot of ways because they're talking to the same people who feel exactly the way they feel. Jesus didn't do that. Jesus, my favorite thing about the Bible is how jacked up everybody is. We were talking about that. Like you took your faith to a place that most people won't. Most people forget about prisoners. Most people forget that maybe salvation is there for them. And you had influences somewhere to take you down in the trenches to dig in with the people who really need Jesus and finding them at that point. And it's just interesting to me what pushed you into, I'm not going to just talk to the 85-year-old lady who is going to leave her inheritance to the church. You're talking to the people who are actually where Jesus went, right? What was the influence in your life? Was it your dad? Was it your faith? Do you feel like you were led by the Holy Spirit? What kind of got you? Because it's just, I love it, dude. I get it why people like me do it because we have to keep ourselves sober. That's part of the entirety of our program is taking what you've learned back out. You're teaching it to people, and I know you've had other problems with addiction that weren't in drugs and alcohol, but you're taking that to people who are at their bottom. Like what pushed you to that?
So there's a few things. One is, well, I'm not a substance addict. I've been around a lot of people who use substances, right? So whether it was in the military and just to say that I'm not an addict didn't say that I didn't use substances.
Sure.
Bro. Like, I mean, I'm just not, I'm not wired that way. I'm wired to think I'm better than you. I'm not wired to you know, like I can pick it up and put it down. That ain't no problem. You know what I mean? But hanging out with people and me, honestly, man, as like a dude raised in the church, me trying to hide amongst these people and not really being able to do so, right? Like I remember, you know, at times, like dudes with all kinds of problems, drinking and drug problems, and then they are running a company and I'm consulting for them out there in California, and then they get in bad with their family and they end up like in the hospital from some health things, and their estranged wife giving me a call and been like, hey, this dude wants you to go pray for him. And I'd be like, why did he say me? And they said, I don't know. He said, you're the closest thing to a pastor they've ever met. And I said, what do you mean, man? Like I was literally trying to do the opposite. Like I don't, you know, but you know what? Like it was just God constantly calling, right, on those things. A dude named Gerald May says, to be alive is to be addicted, and to be addicted is to stand in the need of grace, right? Because here's the thing, man. Addiction ultimately is religious, right? And you know what? Everyone's religious, right? They put something or someone in the center of their world, and they look for it for comfort and for care and for help, right? And I say that actually, so people will say, oh, you put the drugs, you made that your God. I don't actually think that, man. It's something else, right? It's some kind of comfort, some kind of view of the good life, some kind of different telos, right? And what the drugs is the priest. Through the priesthoods of the drugs and alcohol, you're reaching for something beyond yourself, right? They're looking for God at the bottom of a bottle. They're looking for God somewhere through a medium of this like chemical or, this substance. So through the priesthood of that, they're reaching for something, right? And we're all doing that, right? So the old lady at the church, right, who gossips about everyone who's crooked, right? And I'm largely talking about myself, but like, right? But all of this, right? The real religious person that you talked about, right? Through the priesthood of their religion, not through the priesthood of Christ, right? Through the priesthood of their religion, they are reaching for their view of the good life, right? We're all reaching for our view of the good life through a priesthood. And Jesus, on the Sermon on the Mount, gives a view of the good life and says that he is the priest who mediates that
right
through his body and blood.
I love that, dude. Yeah. I've never thought about it like that, but that it kind of, even as simple as what you drink making you eccentric. You know what I mean? Like if I had a glass of wine in my hand, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm actually very studious. When I'm shotgunning Jack Daniels in the bathroom by myself, then nobody sees that. But like if you sit out there, like if I put a sweater on and I was drinking, it was kind of like I was like,
right.
Oh yeah, well I too feel that way about politics, and I think that a martini would be nice, Right. But it like that makes total sense, man. Like I thought of it originally as it was the God, but you're right. It's kind of like to get through that, to get to where you want people to see you, or what makes you feel like you're something you're not.
Right.
Right. Like I was really cool when I was drinking. Mm-hmm. I didn't have anxiety about crowds. I didn't care. I always thought I said to my wife, I was like, it's hard being an extrovert. And she's like, do you know one? And I go, no, me. I'm a comedian. I'm an extrovert. And she goes, no, you're not. And I go, I'm not? And she goes, no. She goes, look at you. She goes, you've lived in Murfreesboro for 22 years. How many friends do you have here that you really like? And I was like, 3. She's like, that's not an extrovert. Like you come home, you want to be at home. When I want to go on vacation, you want to stay home. She's like, and I thought just, I guess I didn't know what the word meant, but I was like, I gotta be, but it's true. I'm fearful. I'm riddled with anxiety. And I don't feel that stuff when I'm at home. But like, I'm a comedian. I can do a show in front of 20,000 people. If you ask me to go to a concert, there's no way in the world I'm going to go stand in a group. But when I drank, I could do anything. So it kind of pushed all those fears and I was a 5-year-old scared kid trying to act like I was the toughest dude that you'd ever met. And it was totally fake, all fake bravado, right? But with Jesus, it made that stuff okay for me. Like, I don't think I'm a loser because I am scared. I don't think I'm a loser because, if I show fear or if I'm vulnerable. I thought any vulnerability meant you were weak and you were a sissy for lack, you know what I mean? Like don't show that. Don't show those things. But I found with Jesus, it's like he knows anyway. And actually, vulnerability is one of the ways that you can help somebody. And if you're honest, you can't create it, but like if you're honestly vulnerable with people, which I think would be hard in front of prisoners, because I've been in jail, but I've never been to prison. Mm-hmm. So like, that's something I'm not trying to workshop you or I'm trying to figure out what to do tonight, but like there's so, I'm trying, you know what I mean? Like, tell me what I'm supposed to, but like, it's a weird thing. It's a vulnerability and all that stuff is so much easier with Jesus in my life, right? Like, I don't have to be perfect when I thought I did. When I thought everybody in the Bible was perfect, I was like, well, I can't live up to that. Now, deny Jesus 3 times after you said you wouldn't, I could live up to that. You know what I mean? It made it more human and more natural and more normal. But how do you express that in there? I can't imagine, I know jail was like that. I can't imagine there being a place that's more based off of bravado and, you know, they always say punch the biggest guy in prison for whatever in movies and all that garbage. Like, that would be a very tough nut to crack for me, I would think. And I'm just so interested in how you do it. Do you lead in these recovery meetings?
No. I bring people in from the outside. I just sit in, right? I just
listen.
Yeah. I just sit in and listen. But like, I'm curious, man, like what's up with, tell me more about that fear that you feel.
So like, I have a huge fear of people not liking me. One, like I'm a comedian, so I will portray myself as, you know, you go to a party or something and say, tell me a joke. Like, I can't stand that. Yeah. And what I would used to do is say something that was so terrible that they wouldn't talk to me anymore. And I like that. Right. But the fear is more people not liking me, especially when I was drinking and trying to stop. I was like, no one's going to like me. I'm never going to have fun again. I'm going to lose all my friends. The people are going to see what a piece of garbage I am, and nobody's going to want to be around me. Because I had put on this mask, this whole fake world, right? My fears now are more about being unable to fix things that I crushed. So like, I have somebody in my family, I don't want to get into the semantics of it, but that I can't make it right with, right? And my fear is that I'm going to die before I get to do that. I have fears. I listen to these near-death experiences all the time. When I was 18 years old, I was at a military school and I watched one of my best friends get electrocuted. So death has been in my head my whole life. Like, and in that same summer, I lost 2 more friends. Just bing, bang. One got shot, bing, dang. So I've always had this death thing that I'm going to die before I get to wrap up my sobriety in a bow, if you will. Like where I settled things. And I'm talking about somebody extremely close to me.
I got you.
And we don't talk.
Yeah.
So I have a fear of that. I don't fear drinking again. Not that I have it beaten, but I know how to, for today, handle that. And, you know, I'd still live one day at a time. But I'm fearful of failure in a lot of ways. Like, I'm fearful that, you know, and it's the thing,
what does failure look like for you?
Well, it used to be money. It was, I didn't make enough money. The thing that happened to me was I had these dreams of getting to, like, if I could do this, like if I could be a feature act in when I first started out, if I could be a feature act in a comedy club, that'd be it for me. I'd be good. Or if I could, and then if I was a headliner, and then if I could be on TV, and then if I could be in a movie, if I could have my own special, if I could do this, do all these things, be on a tour bus. I got all those things, and I've never been more miserable in my life because I had no God. I had God in a way of, hey man, get me through this, you know, and I'll do this. If you do this, I'll do, you know, like I'm bartering with him, and I'm, you know, it was crazy. So I have a fear that I would go back to that. Like, I just got done filming a TV show, and I have to be very cognizant of the fact that I can be a jackass. I could really go right back to treating people like garbage and I don't think I will, but it's a fear.
So for you, what would ultimately success look like for you?
I don't know. And that's the crazy part of it. Like, I feel more successful now with very little money than I ever did when I had a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
And that was hard to reconcile. That was hard to be like, wasted time. I spent so much time chasing something that was so empty and worthless but it becomes how you work, right? It becomes how your brain goes. So I try to be a good husband. I try to be a good dad. I have God first as well as I can. It's not 24 hours a day.
What does it look like for God to be first, as opposed to when he wasn't?
I try to welcome him into everything. So I had a guy tell me one time, we were talking about leaving things at the altar, right? Like people used to say, just leave it at the altar and wash your hands of it. And God's got it. It's good. And I would do that. And by the time I got to the church parking lot, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't do it. And it was explained to me, like, instead of causing yourself to go through that, just welcome him in to every situation, as opposed to take it and then I'm not supposed to worry about it anymore, but then I can't stop worrying about it. And I still am riddled with anxiety.
Because you talked about death. So out of death, God, through Christ, brings life. How has that played out in your life?
Say that again.
Out of death, God brings new possibility, new life.
Right.
Right? Just like out of nothingness, which, like, if you were fancy, you would call it ex nihilo, right? So out of nothing, God pulls something, right? How in your life has God pulled life out of death?
Well, I was almost dead. They said you probably have maybe 5 years to live. They didn't know if I had cirrhosis and my kidneys were shutting down, all that kind of stuff. And they were like, it's going to be a terrible death if you do have cirrhosis. So, and luckily my liver came back. And your liver and like your jawbone are the only things that can, whatever. I don't know. I think science is stupid, but I don't believe any of it. Every scientist, every generation said they had science figured out. And none of them.
Science just means knowledge.
I told you, and I ADD out too, right? But pulling life out of death I was spiritually dead. Like there was nothing. I had already figured out, I was like, all right, if I die in the next year, one kid will be 14, the other will be 16. I'll be all right. That's good. That was a good amount of time. And I was cool with that. Like that was not like I was going, that's sad, that's terrible. I was like, no, that's good. That's good. A lot of people, their parents die when they're 2. I mean, look how much my kids got. I was thinking like that. Spiritually dead, morally pretty much dead. I mean, I wasn't a mean drunk, but God was not in my hemisphere, right? The fact that I'm sitting here doing this podcast was God pulling me out of basically spiritual death, right? Wow. And I tried thousands of times to stop by myself. I mean, I was one of those, tomorrow, I ain't drinking. I'm going to take tomorrow off. And I'd be drinking by 3, right? Sick, drinking. What makes a sickness go? Drink, drink, drink. I think that in death of people around me, I think about it more like this. I had a cousin who was like my little brother that passed. And when I went to his funeral, I was sober. And it was unlike anything I'd ever been to. When my stepdad died, I was sober. And people came to me and were like, what do you think about, like, I was hugging people and loving on them. Whereas before, all I was thinking about is, I need a drink. I need a drink. Are we going to drink there? They have to have drinks there. Hey, you guys, I brought a bottle. You know what I mean? Let's celebrate, toast to them. Let's do that. I wasn't there for anybody. I was dead. I was just a body standing there thinking about nothing but myself and how can I manipulate this funeral of someone I love dearly to switch to me getting a drink. That's what I was thinking. So basically I was just an empty suit standing there. Whereas now, like when my stepdad died, my mom was a wreck and I had this overwhelming feeling of him going, dude, I'm good. Take care of your mom. I'm good. Take care of your mom. So when my son and I went to the funeral, we get in the car and I go, dude, we have 2 things to do. Honor Jack and take care of grandma. We're not going to focus on anything other than that. And it was beautiful. And that was going from an empty suit and being spiritually dead to being there for my mom in the hardest time she's ever been through in her life and not thinking about myself. And how you turned this around to where you're interviewing me, I still can't figure out. but I love the question because it's so true. Like, death is something that now it hurts and it's painful because I'm going to miss the person, but man, I'm so glad he's in heaven. You know, like it's like, dude, I'm going to miss him. I'm going to see him again. And he is in a place, he was in a lot of pain when he was dying. That's over. A lot of us, and the older I get, the more I'm like, I don't know that I'm fit for this world anymore. I cannot figure out, and I have to lean on God for that. But like, I'm like, dude, I'm an old dog. Like this stuff doesn't even make any sense. I don't want to spend the rest of my time not loving Jesus and not trying to be full of the Holy Spirit. I want to get up there and be as straightened out as I can be as far as what I did with the rest of my life. I feel like that was 9 years ago, by the way. They told me I had 5 years. Dang. So I'm kind of living on borrowed time in a sense.
For real.
You know, and maybe the doctors were trying to scare me. I don't know, but I took it as literal.
For sure.
And so it's like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Am I going to waste more time? Or am I going to try to step 12, live alongside Jesus and let him guide me and listen the best I can? I want to spend the rest of my life doing that. And I think death is what caused me to do that in different forms and different senses, the fear of it, the whatever it is. I'm not scared of it anymore.
Right. Well, that's why the church does Ash Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
They mark on your forehead that you are but dust.
Yeah.
And to dust you will return, to remind us that we're mortal.
Yeah.
But man, that story is awesome.
It's pretty crazy. I've got lots more. Would you like to hear them?
Yes.
No, I'm just no, but I just think it's so cool. Like, so many alcoholics and addicts we know it could kill us. We know, like, tonight could be it. Like, I remember laying in bed being like, oh, this is it. Like, I'm not going to wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And so that gets you get used to that. Like, okay, well, that's just something I think. That's just something I feel. That's just something I do. And there's no purpose. And it's funny because when I got sober, I was talking to this TV guy and we were going to do a show together. And he goes, dude, you lost so much weight. Like, what happened? And I go, I quit drinking. And he's like, how did you do that? And I was like, it was all God. And he goes, shut up, dude. I go, no, I'm not kidding. I tried to quit 1,000 times and I couldn't do it on my own until I found God. And he goes, let me tell you something. If I followed you around with a film crew and filmed you, it would just be you going to meetings, you going to this, you going to that. And somewhere a brain cell popped and I go, that's right, because you never see the director.
Right. I love that you said that, man. Like, I often say that about even when you're looking at miracles in the Bible, sometimes it's like confusing, like the Red Sea parts and Moses, right? And you're like, people would definitely know it's God. But actually, the Bible says that Moses goes down and he lifts his hands, and then there was a wind, and then they crossed on dry land, right?
Yeah.
Or when Jesus feeds the 5,000, right? It says that he blessed it and broke it and then divvied it up, and they set people up and they had a banquet or whatever. And then later he says, you didn't come because you saw a miracle. You came because I filled your belly. Right. And so, like, miracles, the miracle worker, man, the director, I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm sure I heard that somewhere because I'm not that smart. But when it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, you want some more of that? Yeah. Pow, pow. I'm getting off the phone because I can't think of anything else. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Mic drop right there, man.
But it's true, man. And people who say, like, I hear people say that all the time. Well, Jesus used to do miracles. There's no miracles anymore. You go into a recovery meeting. You see somebody and you follow their life up to before they found God and after they found God. And if you don't think that's a miracle, you just will not believe.
Right.
That's on you, dude. I can't talk you into anything. I saw this guy, and maybe you know who he is. He's a pastor, I believe, and he does a lot of prison ministries. He's an Asian dude. He has tattoos up on his neck. He's on Instagram all the time. I watch him, and he's freaking killer, man. Like, but he was talking about how people, because I run into this, because I don't know the Bible. I don't have all these verses memorized where I can pop out, bam, bam, and then, whatever. And he goes, people will try to argue the Bible. And they'll say, you really believe that a whale ate a guy and burped him up on the side of the table? My mom had a very good answer to that. She goes, yes, because I choose to. And that's kind of ends the conversation. But what he said was, he goes, instead of trying to use the Bible to convince people you look up Leviticus and da-da-da-da, he goes, just give them your testimony and say, that's all I got, man. Thanks.
Right.
Enjoyed it. And when he said that to me, I was like, dude, that is so right on, because we complicate things and try to outsmart other people. Right. And you can win an argument and be wrong. You can, you know what I mean? Like somebody can out-argue. A lawyer can get somebody off. Mm-hmm. You can use manipulation and feelings and things and make people think certain ways and take them down a road of whatever. That doesn't mean it happened. Right? But your own testimony, your own story, for me, an addiction, getting out of it, one is a miracle. I don't care what anybody says. Like nobody may have parted the sea in a way that you want a miracle to be, but there are little miracles. I call them God winks that are all day long, dude. Right. Let me just tell you about this podcast and something that happened. So I had wanted to do this podcast for a long time. And I was at a meeting pitching it. My phone rings, and it's Larry the Cable Guy's wife. She had a check for me, whatever. She goes, what are you doing? And I said, I'm pitching this podcast. And she goes, don't pitch it to anybody else. She goes, I'm on the board at Back to the Bible. I want to talk to you about this. I'm like, okay, cool. 2 hours later, Arnie Cole, who runs Back to the Bible, calls me and goes, let's sit down and talk about it. I come to Nebraska to go do shows with Cable Guy. We sit down. I just met Arnie. I'm like, I don't know, like it's so churchy, and I'm more of a recovery guy, and that type of thing. I'm like, I don't know. And so what I said was I go, dude, I don't think I can do this podcast and have it be successful unless I have something else to pitch. Because if I go to my outlets in the media and say it's about sobriety and Jesus, they're going to go, please don't talk about that on our thing. We're a comedy thing, we're a country thing, we're whatever. So I'm like, I don't know if it'll work, right? And I'm thinking like, I don't know, Arnie, I just met him and this seems to whatever. I go, I need something else. The next day, phone rings. This guy goes, hey man, I don't know if you remember me, but I met you down in Florida. I put you up for a commercial for this construction thing or whatever. We have a TV show of 13 episodes that we're going to film, and I want to put you in for it. No manager, no agent, no attorney, nothing. Phone call the next day out of nowhere. He goes, make me a little video, whatever. So I go down to Cable Guy's barn. I make a video. It's a chainsaw show or whatever. Send it over. I freaking got it. Right? I go back home, 4th of July. I'm in the pool with my wife, friends of ours from church from California that sat in front of us for 2 years that we become friends with, and my stepdaughter's in-laws. We're on the pool. Get in the pool. My wife, Sandy, goes, hey, tell Ben and Susan about what you have going on. And I go, well, it's crazy. Like, I got this show where I'm a host of this chainsaw carving competition thing. And I went to Nebraska and I sat down with this guy, and I'm thinking about doing this podcast about Jesus and sobriety. And Susan goes, are you talking about Lincoln, Nebraska? And I go, yeah. And she goes, that Back to the Bible? I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. We go to First Presbyterian Church with 300 members. I go, yeah. And she goes, do you know Arnie and Char Cole? And I go, I just met with Arnie. Mm. And she goes, we've been friends with them for 40 years. We're from the same town in California. They are the greatest people you could ever want to be with. She goes, that's so beautiful. And I'm like,
that's amazing, man.
Wait, what? And she goes, yeah. Dude, I just look up in the sky. I'm like, all right, dude, I'm in. I'm all in. I'm all in, right? There's no way that happened without a God nudge.
Right.
There's no way that I said I need something else to do to promote it, and God's like, all right, cool, tomorrow. Dink. Then I can't give away what happens on the show. But then I get on the show and I'm like, I'm just doing this show because I can make some money and do my podcast and whatever. God's all over that show.
For real.
And I can't tell you how, but something happened, and I constantly make fun of people for crying on TV. Like if you're hosting a show and you start crying, I'm like, shut up, dude. I freaking cried on the show. Like I was like, no, I suck. Like it was, but when people say there's no miracles, you can't convince me that that's not what that was.
For real.
You can't convince me that that was not all done. And people will go, well, how come that happens to you and didn't happen to me? I don't know. Right. But I know this, it didn't happen before I tried as hard as I could and opened my heart up to let Jesus in.
Right.
Stuff like that didn't happen to me.
That is so amazing. Like that dude, that's a testimony to the action of God in your life, right? What if you viewed the Bible not as a rule book? And sometimes people say it's a love letter to you, which I'm sure it is, right? But what if it is just a bunch of broken people testifying to the action of God in their life? Right? Because that is what the Bible is. It is testimony of a community and of individuals in that community testifying to how they've seen God at work in and through their history, through their life, through all of that stuff. That is what the Bible is. The Bible is kind of like another big book way before, right? Because it's just testimony to the actions of God as he brings life out of death, out of nothing. Yeah. Possibilities.
It's crazy, right?
It's absolutely nuts.
And then when stuff like that happens, and I mean even like little things that happen throughout the day, it's not like I think God likes me more. You know what I mean? I don't feel like that at all. Like I'm not walking around having amazing experiences, and you know, because I used to hear people talk about it, and I'm like, shut up, dude. That never happened to me. Right? You know what I mean? But I never paid attention. And if anybody pays attention to it, and you come from a place of love, and you're trying to fulfill your spirit and get Jesus in your heart, and you're working towards it. You're not going to perfect it. I jack stuff up all the time. I mean, God knows what I said in the car on the way over here when a truck cut me off with a bunch. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not perfect. I don't want to portray myself that way. But if you pay attention, you'll see it. And it's not just me. I see it more in other people's lives in recovery than my own. You know, they talk about a spiritual awakening. There's nothing that makes me feel better than seeing somebody have, and that doesn't mean like the clouds part and, oh, step up, Timmy. You know, it's not that. But it's like when you see somebody go from the depths of addiction to sitting down with another addict and helping guide them, the fact that that person went from this to that is a miracle. If you believe. Right? If you just think that it just happens naturally, you haven't seen what the people went through to get there. You haven't seen them dig out their guts. You haven't seen them surrender. You haven't seen them crying, wanting to die, you know, when they first come in, and just one inkling, one little part of them is like, I got to try to stay alive, when the rest of everything about them is trying to kill them. And then you see them go, hey man, let's go over to Dunkin' Donuts and sit down for an hour and work on this step. That's a miracle. Jesus lifted everybody up, whether it's the woman at the well, whether he constantly was grabbing someone down and out, telling them he loves them, and lifting them up. The woman at the well had been married 5 times, which I later learned the husband had to leave the wife. She couldn't left. But in her village, she is down and out. She was up there by herself, not getting any help getting the water in the middle of the day, piping hot. She was ostracized. And when he said, go back, and he said, that's right, you've been married 5 times, and the man you're with right now isn't your husband. Go back and tell them the Messiah's here. That took her in that village and lifted her up to now she's the first person to tell everybody Jesus is here.
For real.
Changed everything about her life. Matthew, I thought tax collector, what? So what? He worked for the IRS. It wasn't that. He was torching his own people. He was collecting money for the Romans from his own people that were desolate. Right? He was hated by his family, by everybody. What did he do? Follow me. Okay. Right? Lift it up. No longer that guy. And if in recovery, that's kind of what the 12 steps do. By the time you get to 12, get out there, lift up other alcoholics and addicts. It's the same thing. I'm nowhere near Jesus, but if I can do it, just seeds. You don't have to do it all. Seeds. Drop a seed. And it makes me feel good and keeps me sober. And it's all God.
How do you think the Spirit changed your desires, like your loves?
So I wasn't one of those people where he just took it, right? I always say it took me a long time to get down in that bottom of that hill, that hole. And God knows me and is like, we're going to slow step this out. Because if God would have just zap, I'd have taken advantage of it, manipulated it, been like, aha, look at me, look what I did, right? So I feel like God knows me enough to be like, dude, we're just going to kind of ease you one little tiny step at a time to get you through it. And I have no patience, and it's teaching me a little bit. His will and taking that off of myself lightens me. What he wants to be done, if I'm trying to listen and follow it, what's better than that? Right? So my spirit is different. My love for people is different. My approach in general is different. As opposed to looking at someone going, what can I get from them? I try to think, what could I do for them? Right? Because I was a getter, gimme. And I could play the nice guy thing to manipulate you into thinking, master manipulator. Master. To the point that my mom, people in my family, are you sure you're an alcoholic? Yes. Ready to share. You know what I mean? I could manipulate anybody. And that isn't my first thought anymore. It's more like, I wonder if I could do something for that dude. I wonder, if there's something. And selfishly, it feels so much better. I feel better. I'm not as angry internally. I'm not as scared. I'm not as, what's the word? I'm not, my first reaction isn't negative or selfish. Now, I can do that on a daily basis, I'm sure, but that's not my thought. My first thought is like, hey, man, what do you need? And if I can help you, I'll help you. And especially in the alcoholic addict. There's boundaries and there's rules. And, this podcast isn't to try to get people to quit drinking. Right. It's to help people who already are, have you at least tap their toe into recovery. And I can't sit somebody down for a half an hour and talk them into believing in God.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just in my experience, it almost turns them away. So in recovery, I think it's more of trying to live as the best example you can, because attraction comes to the joy, right? And if I walk around as a angry, white-knuckling, I can't drink, well, what does that do for anybody? It hurts me and it hurts them.
Right.
And these are things I try, by the way. I'm not trying to act like I have everything figured out, because I don't at all. But it's attempts. It's trying to walk that way.
So you kind of started off asking me about like what you can say to people in prison, right? And when that seed that you drop, right? It's the seed of the Holy Spirit, right? The Word of God. But what does that look like in prison with these dudes, and specifically like for you, right? And I'll tell you that spirituality, that openness that comes, right, is the connection between one person and another, because God is present in there. And the way you do it is by making the first move, right? Just like by talking about your story, and not just your story on the surface, right? But your story of God's action in your life.
Yeah.
Man, that's how you break down defenses. Because when you open that up, man, you open up everybody else that wants to come. And that little connection right there, right? You're the soft sound of sandaled feet to dudes behind bars, right? To the addict on the other side of this cast, man. Yeah. That's your story is amazing, bro.
Oh, I got more. We can, dude, I cannot thank you enough for doing this, man. It's and thank you for what you're doing for alcoholics and addicts that are incarcerated and that aren't. Mm-hmm. You know, it's one of the coolest things to see people in action doing things that are clearly you're not doing this for money. Clearly you're not doing this for a pat on the back, or you're not out in front of people, you know, hey, look at me. You're digging into the trenches, and I really respect that a lot, man. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking about it. And I don't know how you turned this around where, like, I'm sitting here going, I start telling stories. I'm like, wait a minute, this is my podcast. Dude, I loved every second of it. You guys, thank you so much for watching Alive and Sober. If you can, subscribe or whatever it says at the bottom of your head, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if you're out there and you're struggling, you know, keep at it. Keep going to God. He ain't leaving you. We leave him, but he's never leaving you, and he meets you where you are. And as I end every episode, if no one told you they love you today, I do. Thanks, y'all.